Hey everyone, I'm Abby Sharp. Welcome to another edition of Fertility Files. In today's video, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about commonly used fertility supplements and alleged fertility foods. I'm also going to be joined at the end of the video by my friend and my fertility acupuncturist, naturopathic doctor, Dr. Laura von Hagen, so definitely stay tuned for that later on. Now, before we get into it, my general disclaimer that the information in this video is for educational purposes only, and you should always speak to your healthcare provider before starting any kind of supplement regime, especially if you're undergoing fertility treatments. Okay, so as a fellow infertility warrior, I can attest to how easy it is to get suckered into doing anything suggested for trying to conceive. Even if it's seemingly complete BS, if the internet tells us to try it, a lot of us will. There are lots of mommy blogs out there recommending what to eat, what not to eat, supplements, and the like. But aside from your daily prenatal vitamin, are there really any legitimate recommendations for fertility foods and supplements to take to increase your chances of getting pregnant? Let's start by taking a look at some of the research on fertility supplements that may be recommended for helping you get pregnant and stay pregnant. Now, I just want to make clear that this is just a brief summary for the video's sake, so I'll also leave a link below to my blog for some more details and the references as well. So, number one, folic acid. Studies have shown that folic acid plays a significant role in oocyte quality, implantation, fetal growth, and placentation. In women, we do have research suggesting that it may improve oocytes, with other research confirming its role in embryo development and growth. In terms of male fertility, one research study found that folic acid resulted in 16% decrease in sperm damage, while another study found that it improved sperm count and motility. Number two, zinc. So research has found an inverse relationship between male fertility and zinc levels, meaning male infertility coincides with lower zinc levels, while higher zinc levels tends to be linked with higher sperm counts. Zinc supplementation has also been linked with lower sperm damage in men. In women, the research is less reliable as it's mainly animal-based, but early animal research suggests that zinc deficiency may be linked with improper embryo development due to a defect in placenta development, as well as decreased ovulation. Ultimately, zinc supplementation could possibly help with infertility in women, but more actual human research is needed. Number three is vitamin D. So evidence suggests that women with higher concentrations of vitamin D tend to have higher ovarian reserves and oocyte quality. Vitamin D may also play a protective role against endometriosis by increasing endometrial thickness inside the endometrium. Number four, omega-3 fatty acids. So research suggests that a diet high in omega-3s can improve reproductive success by improving oocyte quality in women, with one study seeing improvements when 2% of total calories in a woman's diet came from omega-3s. Number five is vitamin E. As a powerful antioxidant, vitamin E can help reduce oxidative stress, which in turn can possibly reduce the risk of common reproductive disorders such as endometriosis, infertility, PCOS, etc. Vitamin E may also help increase endometrial thickness by increasing the blood flow to the endometrium in women. Vitamin E supplementation has also been linked to reduce sperm damage in men, so there may be benefits for both men and women suffering with infertility. Number six, coenzyme Q10. So research suggests that coenzyme Q10 supplementation may be linked with improved ovarian response in women with low ovarian reserves. It may also help with PCOS symptoms by balancing insulin and sex hormones. In research done on male fertility, CoQ10 has been linked with higher sperm motility and count. So again, possible benefits for male and female infertility. Number seven, inositol. In a research study with over 900 women being treated for anovulation, supplementation of inositol improved pregnancy rates by 6.13% by improving embryo quality and the number of oocytes retrieved. As discussed in our PCOS video, which I'll link here, we also know that inositol is a powerful adjunct for women with PCOS, with research suggesting that it may help restore ovulation and improve your chances of pregnancy. Number eight is melatonin. One 2014 review found that melatonin acts as an antioxidant to improve egg quality and may increase IVF pregnancy rates by as much as 21%. Number 9 is acai berry powder. An ongoing study conducted by CCRM Fertility, which is my fertility clinic, has shown promising results on the effectiveness of acai berry powder and pregnancy outcomes for women undergoing IVF. This effect is likely due to its high antioxidant levels. Despite the small sample size, 81% of study participants achieved ongoing clinical pregnancies, but of course, more research on this is definitely needed. Number 10 is L-citrulline. Evidence suggests that L-citrulline may be associated with increased sperm count and motility in men. However, research on L-citrulline in women is extremely scarce. Number 11 is selenium. So research on selenium and female infertility is likewise very scarce. One study found that selenium deficiencies were associated with improper fetal development, pregnancy complications, and miscarriages. On the other hand, research has found that selenium supplementation in men may improve conception and sperm motility. Number 12 is B12. How fitting. So in addition to folic acid, which we already discussed, research has found that B12 supplementation in men may help improve sperm count and motility. Number 13 is N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. So when men with a condition that involves the enlargement of the veins in the scrotum, NAC supplementation combined with surgery improves sperm quality and pregnancy rates. But of course, we don't know if it was the supplement or the surgery doing the trick. In women with PCOS, research suggests that supplementation of NAC may help induce ovulation. But of course, more research is always needed. Number 14 is PQQ, or a really long word like pyrrolylquinoline quinone. I don't know. Now, while research is very limited, there were a few mice studies finding some improvements in reproductive performance. However, of course, we do need some human evidence before we can make a lot of suggestions. Number 15 is iron. So one long-term study found that 438 women with infertility decreased their risk of ovulatory infertility when they supplemented for iron for over an 8-year period. Again, more research would be great. Number 16 is acetyl L-carnitine, or ALC. There is some early research that ALC may be linked with improved oocyte quality and maturation, possibly by preventing oxidative stress in the body because of its antioxidant properties. However, we definitely need more evidence to confirm this. Number 17 is L-arginine. While quality research is limited, some pilot studies have suggested that supplementation may help improve ovarian response, endometrium quality, and associated pregnancy rates in women. It may also help improve sperm motility and count in men. Number 18 is maca. Although there is very little quality research on this, one 2016 review found that maca powder was associated with improved semen quality, but most of the studies were seriously flawed, so we do obviously need better quality ones to make suggestions. Number 19 is bee pollen and propolis. Now, one animal study conducted in 2011 found that the consumption of bee pollen in male subjects was linked with improved sperm quality, while women with endometriosis saw a 40% increase in pregnancy after consuming bee pollen. Again, we need more quality research in this area. Number 20 is royal jelly. So animal research has shown that royal jelly, which is produced by bees, may help increase ovarian hormones and promote hormonal balance due to its alleged estrogenic effects. Obviously, you know what I'm going to say, human trials are needed to confirm this. Now, number 21 is bromelain. While it has been speculated in a lot of fertility circles that bromelain in pineapples can cause blood thinning to supply more blood to the uterus, thereby preparing it for implantation and, of course, pregnancy, the research in this area is admittedly very scarce. So it may or may not help to eat a lot of pineapple when you're trying to conceive, or you'll just end up with like a lot of mouth sores. I don't know. I like pineapple, so you do you. Number 22 is choline. So evidence suggests that human fetuses receive a large amount of choline during pregnancy, hence why the needs of a mother-to-be are very high, around 450 to 550 milligrams a day. Although research linking choline with fertility is limited, we do know that women's intake during pregnancy is not actually always adequate. So there is some suggestion by experts that supplementing may help. Again, obviously, we need more research on whether or not this affects conception at all. Now, I think it's safe to say that the bottom line for almost everything here is that we need more research. We just do. People need to do more research on women's health. Some of these supplements have more supporting research than others and are therefore more likely to be used in fertility clinics across the world. But unless you have an actual clinically diagnosed deficiency, it's unlikely that any one of these alone are necessarily going to make or break your chances of getting pregnant. Whether or not you want to incorporate these into your fertility regime is totally up to you and should be between you and your healthcare provider. Next, I want to talk about the foods and dietary patterns that may help support conception and a healthy pregnancy. Number 1, plant-based protein. Good news for my plant-based followers and fans. Research has shown that swapping out animal protein for plant-based protein may help decrease one's risk of ovulatory infertility. While another study found that consuming more animal protein resulted in a 32% increase in the risk of infertility, possibly because of the higher levels of saturated fat, antibiotics, and hormonal residues. In contrast, research has shown that specifically non-heme iron, which is the type of iron that we find in plant-based proteins, may help decrease the risk of anovulatory infertility. This doesn't mean that you need to go completely plant-based or vegan necessarily, but as always, I do think we can all benefit from incorporating more plant-based protein into our week. Now, number 2 is full-fat dairy. Research has uncovered an association between consuming higher amounts of low-fat dairy and anovulatory infertility, while seeing an inverse relationship between high-fat dairy and risk of anovulatory infertility. All the more reason to go with the really delicious, creamy 5% yogurt. Number 3 is nuts like walnuts. So research suggests that consuming 75 grams of walnuts per day may be associated with increased sperm motility, count, and morphology in men, possibly because of the alpha-linolenic acids in the nuts, as well as nutrients like selenium, B vitamins, and zinc. Number 4 is eating breakfast. So research on women with PCOS found that eating a larger breakfast compared to their lunch or dinner meals was associated with an increased chance of ovulation compared to women who ate larger meals later on in the day. The larger breakfast also helped reduce insulin and testosterone levels, which is totally key for PCOS management. Number 5, fiber-rich carbs. While the research on fiber and fertility is admittedly mixed, one study found that increased intake of cereal fiber, or 10 grams of fiber per day, was associated with a 44% decrease in the risk of anovulatory infertility in women over the age of 32. However, this decreased risk was not seen, unfortunately, in younger women. It was also found that a low glycemic index diet for patients with PCOS resulted in higher percentages of ovulatory cycles compared to patients with a normal glycemic index diet. Okay, so now you know some potentially healthy foods to include. What about foods to potentially limit when you're trying to conceive? Number 1, trans fats. One study found that even a 2% increase in the consumption of trans fats was associated with a 94% increase in the risk of ovulatory infertility. So it may be best to reduce consumption of processed foods or anything with hydrogenated oils in the ingredients list. Number 2 is high glycemic index carbs. While the research is definitely limited in this area, one study on 438 women found a positive correlation between intakes of high glycemic index carbohydrates, think like white bread or white pasta or sugar and sweets, and the risk of ovulatory infertility. Meanwhile, consumption of low glycemic index carbs happened to reduce this risk. In fact, for women with PCOS, one study found that a lower glycemic index diet improved menstrual regularity in 80% of the women studied. Number 3 is caffeine. Now, consuming caffeine has been talked about quite a lot in pregnancy circles and in the fertility community. One large study researching the connection between caffeine consumption and conception found that women who consume over 500 milligrams a day took over 9 months longer to conceive than women who consumed less than 500 milligrams a day. Another study found that increasing caffeine intake by just 100 milligrams a day was associated with increased risk of miscarriage. A third study found that women who consumed over 75 milligrams all the way upwards to 900 milligrams a day had an increased risk of spontaneous miscarriage compared to women who consumed less than 75 milligrams a day. So more research is definitely needed to understand these findings in the context of conception, but for now the guidelines in pregnancy at least is to have no more than 200 milligrams of caffeine per day, which is about equivalent to 1 16-ounce coffee on average. Number 4 is alcohol. So research has found that low to moderate consumption of alcohol, which is about 1 standard drink a day for women, does not necessarily negatively impact the chances of conception. However, consumption of 10 or more drinks per week does seem to have a negative impact. The thinking is that alcohol is pro-inflammatory, which can possibly increase the inflammation in relation to the endometrium, which in turn may influence fertility. So now that we've gone over food, I want to conclude with some other general lifestyle considerations when trying to conceive. I may be a dietitian, but arguably these suggestions are probably the most valuable and evidence-based. So they really should probably be your first line of defense before you go to expensive supplements or drastic changes to your diet. That is, of course, in addition to whatever your doctor is suggesting medically. Number 1, exercise. Now, research has found that any type of physical activity may be associated with an increase in fertility among obese women, while moderate physical activity may result in a small increase in overall fertility regardless of BMI. Obviously, BMI is not a great indicator of health, but I'm just using this because that is what the research is based on. Now, having said that, I want to note that strenuous exercise can result in hypothalamic dysfunction, which in turn can lead to menstrual cycle irregularities and hormonal suppression, which of course then can cause anovulation. Moderation is definitely key when it comes to exercise, so choose an activity that you enjoy doing and listen to your body in terms of intensity. Number 2, stress management. Multiple studies suggest that infertility is significantly associated with stress, as it may contribute to irregular menstrual cycles and ultimately anovulation. If stress is a really big factor in fertility, learning how to manage your stress may play a really big role in your personal fertility journey. Some possible ways to manage stress include exercising, attending therapy, or finding a distracting hobby to take your mind off of the stress. Personally, I actually found that acupuncture strangely was very stress relieving for me, so that is another option for you. I know that is totally easier said than done, especially when trying to conceive, but find some strategies that work for you and stick to them. Number 3 is getting enough sleep. So sleep deprivation in women may impact the release of luteinizing hormone, aka LH, which is what triggers ovulation and regulates your cycle. This may explain why one analysis found that female shift workers were at higher risk of miscarriage and other menstrual cycle disturbances. Again, we definitely need more research in this unique area, but we know how important sleep is for hormone regulation and stress management in general, so this really would make total sense. So that, my friends, is what the research says, but I also want to get some clinical real-world insight before we sign off here. So I have with me my friend, Dr. Laura von Hagen, who is a naturopathic doctor here in Toronto, where I live, who specializes uniquely in fertility. And she actually was the person who did all of my fertility acupuncture as well. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, Laura.
So happy to be here, Abby. Great to see you, even though it's from afar.
Totally. So first of all, I'd love to hear a bit about, what are some of the most common fertility diagnoses that you see patients in your clinic for?
So the most common thing that I see is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And this, as you know, is characterized by irregular periods and infertility. And it's something that I was actually diagnosed with at age 25. So a lot of people reach out for that.
Mhm.
The next most common thing I would say is a combination of low ovarian reserve and poor egg quality. So typically, these are people who have maybe seen a fertility specialist and they've been told that their AMH is low, which is how we measure ovarian reserve. Or maybe they've done IVF and unfortunately they had a failed cycle due to poor egg quality. So at that point, they're coming in to see me looking for some integrated care to kind of try and boost their egg quality or their sperm quality if that's the issue for their next cycle.
Yeah, amazing. For sure. Makes so much sense to me. And just from my own experience and seeing how many women come to me and ask for, recommendations when it comes to PCOS. So that totally makes sense to me. Now, one of the big criticisms of the supplement world is that they're expensive and there's not always a lot of great evidence to support them in some cases, all of which we've kind of gone through in this video today. So I'm wondering, in your clinical experience, is there one or two supplements that you find makes the biggest difference in outcomes for people who might be on more of a budget?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is something I hear often, but it's actually the reason I love doing integrated fertility care because we have quite a bit of robust evidence for using these supplements to help support outcomes, specifically in IVF. So if I had to pick two, which is hard, it would be CoQ10 and vitamin D. CoQ10 is an antioxidant, and it's been shown to improve egg and sperm quality. And when it comes to CoQ10, it is something where the form really does matter. It needs to be in a fat soluble base in order for it to be absorbed. So it is something that I would spend a little bit higher price point on just to make sure that you're actually then absorbing it into your body. The other one is vitamin D, and it's incredibly important for fertility. And as Canadians, and now that we're like quarantined inside, like we're just not getting enough vitamin D. And adequate vitamin D has been shown to improve pregnancy rates. It can reduce your risk of miscarriage. And what I find most interesting, I can actually raise your AMH, so your ovarian reserve. And the thing with vitamin D is you really have to test. You can't guess dosing. I've seen this across hundreds of patients. I give the same dose, I get very different levels. So if people are really low, I will recommend vitamin D injections, but with your fertility specialist, they are the ones who should be really testing your vitamin D, and then that will help us guide our dosing for you.
And is that something you would just ask your doctor, can I get a vitamin D test? I know it does cost money, correct? At least here.
Mm-hmm. It's not covered by OHIP. So I do run it as a naturopathic doctor. I can run blood work, or they can do it with their doctor. So I'm like, it doesn't matter. Either way, it's not covered. Some fertility clinics off the get-go, they run it on everyone. Other ones don't. And it's one of those things in my initial consult, and especially with PCOS, because there's robust research there with vitamin D, I'm always asking, when did you have your vitamin D tested? And I want to see adequate levels because I've seen cycles that didn't work out. And when we ran vitamin D, they were super deficient. And once we got levels up, we did see success. And I can't say it's absolutely that's the reason why, but I'm sure it played a really important part.
Wow, amazing. Now, obviously, like we've said, like supplements are highly individualized based on the population, based on blood work, based on needs. But for the general population who are trying to conceive, are there any, of these supplements that you think would be valuable for all of us to be paying attention to?
Mm-hmm. And it's a great question, Abby. And I think that we need to put a little bit more focus on two things specifically. The first one being melatonin, and then the second one being L-carnitine. So for the first one, melatonin, it's actually an antioxidant, and it can help improve our egg quality and also help with implantation in the uterus. Interestingly, there's actually receptors for melatonin in our uterus. And with so much stress and so much exposure to blue light in front of our computers all day, doing more Zoom meetings, we're just not getting enough. And generally, people love taking melatonin. It makes them sleep really well, other than some people who have vivid dreams. And it's a pretty cost-effective supplement. So I think more and more we're going to see it being used and used with IVF cycles. And then the other one is L-carnitine. So it used to get a lot of hype for weight loss, but the research doesn't really support that. but as an amino acid, it is important for energy metabolism. And the reason I like it is because we've studied it with a drug called letrozole or Femara, which is super common for PCOS to help with ovulation. And when we add in that L-carnitine, we see that ovulation rates go up, we see that their endometrial uterine lining gets thicker, and most importantly, we see clinical pregnancy rates are higher. And so it seems to help with that energy metabolism, and it actually acts more of like a shuttle to get CoQ10 into our cells. So it's best taken with the CoQ10. So we can see more and more research coming out on that. And because we're often giving, at least for me, I'm giving supplements while patients are taking medications, I really like when I see research that they're being used together. So I know that it's safe for me to prescribe to my patients.
Really interesting. So when it comes to supplements, obviously the supplement world is quite overwhelming. Are there any guidelines that you try to stick to when it comes to choosing supplements to make sure that you're getting a quality brand?
Let's say Advil, like you go to the grocery store and you can buy Advil and you can buy generic ibuprofen and you know you're buying the same thing, and that's not the case for supplements. In general, Canada has much stricter guidelines than the US. My preference then is to work with Canadian companies, and I don't work with one specific company. I don't have any ties or financial because I want to keep that separate. And so I'll use a variety of different companies. But what I'm looking for is that they've done third-party testing for things like their fish oils, that I can see that it's standardized to the active ingredient. So especially for herbs, it's not just the amount, but what is the active ingredient. And then the other thing is the amount per capsule or per dose actually what's been studied? Because what I see a lot of times is these products that have kind of 10 things, this laundry list where they sprinkle coated in things that people might have read about it on the internet, but it's at like a fifth of the dose that they've actually researched. And so that's where I can kind of come in and, knowing all the research, put together a better plan at a therapeutic dose. And so I wish there was more guidelines around this, but I try to really stick to Canadian brands that I know and trust, and I've built up that relationship with them.
Okay, and then finally, for those who have already complicated relationships with food, which is admittedly a lot of my viewers, people who watch my channel, and also just women in general, are there any non-diet recommendations that you think you can make that also will have a significant impact on fertility outcomes?
And this is a tough one because we know that diet has a significant impact on fertility, but I also don't want to stress patients out about it. Going through fertility is already so stressful, and I've had patients come to me where they've seen other health professionals who put them on like a organic, gluten-free, dairy-free, paleo diet, and it was just like way too much and way overwhelming. And so I try to make it a piece, but not stress about it too much. In terms of non-diet, something that I use a lot of is acupuncture, and I think that it can be really, really important. Unfortunately, I'm not doing it right now because we're only doing virtual consultations. But for helping with stress, for helping with blood flow, for helping with relaxation, I think it can really help. And then the other one is movement. I think that movement is really important, and we know that exercise can be really great for fertility and overall health. And again, not something that I want to stress people out about, because we actually don't want to be over exercising when we're trying to conceive, because then that can kind of swing the pendulum too far. And I've had times where I've had to cut back patients and tell them that they can't go to CrossFit, 7 times a week. That's not allowed. And so I really just ask patients, well, what do you like to do? Is it walking? Is it swimming? I don't really care, because the exercise that you like is the one you're going to stick with. And that's what's going to be the most important. So just getting a little bit more movement in your day can be really, really great for mental and physical health.
Yeah, that's totally, and I'm totally on board with that message. I think that all of these suggestions are great, but if it stresses you out more, then it does more harm than it does good. So I think that's a really good kind of take home message here. But thank you so much, Laura, for joining me.
You're welcome. I wish I could be there in person with you.
I know, us too. And we'll leave some links below so that people who are seeking out some fertility support can find you as well.
Yeah, so be happy to connect. I'm pretty active on social media as well, and I look forward to hearing from people and seeing what their questions are.
Absolutely. Thanks, Laura.
Bye.
I think it's safe to say that women and men who are struggling with infertility are often just so desperate to do whatever they can to improve their chances. While the research in this area is often very limited, and it's unlikely that in most cases, adding a little bee pollen will make or break the chances of getting pregnant. But I will say that a lot of these recommended foods and supplements are generally low risk and generally healthy for you. So again, it's important to remember, even if you do not make any or all of these dietary changes, you are not at fault for your infertility. Lots of people get pregnant despite doing the exact opposite of these suggestions. But I will say, as somebody who has struggled with infertility, I understand that sometimes you just want to feel like you did everything possible in your power that you could. And sometimes making these small changes to your lifestyle may give you some sense of control, even if there's not a whole lot of research to back them up. Ultimately, if it brings you peace of mind, it may be worth exploring some of these options. But if it makes you more anxious and stressed to think about all of these different little things, it definitely will not help the cause. Either way, it's always best to speak with your unique healthcare provider about the best supplements and best dietary changes for you. Baby dust to all of you, and on that note, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below if you have any more fertility questions that I can answer in this series. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!